That's all the documents I keep with me. Somebody says, well, what about this? Boom, I open it up. I have PJ's installation guidelines in there. I have FCICA, CRI, CFI, NWFA. I keep it there. That is literally my toolbox. If I go somewhere, it goes with me, right? Mucho importante. All right, so what is ASTM, right? So again, we've talked about it a lot. I'm not familiar. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with ASTM, but it's basically a bunch of volunteers who get together and talk about flooring. We have manufacturers, we have inspectors, we have contractors, we have adhesive manufacturers, sundry manufacturers, and we all have a place. But the biggest thing is we volunteer, right? Anybody can volunteer to be in this group. It costs $115 for a year. It went up. It was $75. But it's only $115. You have access to everything that's in FO6. If you tried to buy them separately, they're $35, $40 a pop, right? $115. When you join, you can vote on these things. You have a say. If you think something shouldn't go and you have a very reasonable reason or a provable reason, it might not go through, right? We have to talk about your negative, right? So that's what makes it good. We're all on equal grounds. How many inspectors are in here? It's not what you know, it's what you can prove, right? You may know they screwed up all you want, but if you just put in your report or send it to a GC or give it to a contractor, whatever, hey, you messed up. What's that going to do? It's not going to do anything. But with ASTM, you can tell them what they did, why they did it wrong. Here's the reference document, everything, right? So again, mitigating liability is what all of us should be about, right? All right, so there's 6 different types of documents in ASTM. Classification, specification, test method, guide, practice, and terminology. So if you get your terminology correct, you can shoot for a specification as long as you meet the test method standards, and then you can classify it correctly. It all works together, right? They're not standalone. They all build off of each other. So the first one we're going to talk about is classification. And I started with this one because in FO6 there are no classifications, right? We work off specification. So specification. Lee talked about it earlier when he said, how do you know what is, how do we know what solid vinyl tile is compared to VCT? What's the difference? What's the main difference? The amount of plasticizer in it, right? What's 34%, Lou? It's up to 34%. If it's below that, it's VCT. If it's above that, it's vinyl tile. But you can find the specification that's relevant to the flooring that you're doing by looking in ASTM, right? How many in here know what specification is relatable to LVT? Anybody know? Oh, I was going to get you good on that one. There is no standard for LVT because it can mean about a dozen different things. So when someone says they have an LVT that they want installed, get more information. Find out what it is, right? Oh, let me go back a little bit. We were talking about something before. Manufacturers, contractors, you know, especially myself, when you're talking about adhesives being used with these products, too many times we see people make decisions and choices based on economics when it should have been based on performance. Just remember that. It should always be on performance. If you spend $15 more for a bucket of glue, chances are you're going to get a better product, right? All right, keep going. I'm moving fast. All right, so again, the specification, the one that I mentioned before was the vinyl, but rubber floor tile. Do you want to know what that is? You have F1344 that will tell you if you meet this specification during the manufacturing process, you can call it rubber floor tile, right? If you don't meet that specification, you can't call it rubber floor tile. Or if you do, you're wrong, right? Easy enough. Yeah, luxury rubber tile. You need to coin that one. So a guide. The next one is a guide. It's a compendium of information about the different options that you have. So it's not a test method, it's not a specification that you got to meet, it's a guide. It's going to lead you in the right direction. And we had this conversation at ASTM when we were talking about 2659. This is a guide currently. ASTM F06 is considering making this a test method, right? Which I will fight with every tooth and nail I have for the rest of my life to make that from happening. And why do you think, not only is my product in touch with the slab, right? So I'm very, very aware of moisture, but why would you think I wouldn't want that? Oops. So I got my slides a little bit out of order here. So if you look at this, if you look at 2170, that's an actual test method. You do this, then you do that, you do this, and you get a result, right? Who remembers 15 years ago, 13 years ago, 2170 went through what? A complete revamp. Because what happened is they had all these probe manufacturers building probes that were different, right? One wasn't better or wrong, they were just all different. In order to keep it as a test method, we had to create specifications so they're all built the same way. What do you think is going to happen with moisture meters? If I tell Tramex, oh, well, now you got to make them like Wagner. Lignomat, you got to make them the same way as everybody else. Is that really what we want? I mean, who's going to give up that knowledge or that proprietary information that they have? And until it's all being made the same way, we're just getting a number. What's 4? What's 34? What's 88? You know, I get it all the time. Hey, I got 4 on my moisture test. 4 what? I don't know. That's what the guy told me. Doesn't mean anything, right? You got to have the information to support what you're talking about. So it's a guide. Is this a useful tool? Absolutely. Everybody should use it every day. It's going to tell you where to do the test. It's going to tell you if you have hot spots. There's a lot of benefit to using this. I just don't think it's going to be as a test method, right? So the reason it's called a test method, it produces a test result. Not only does it produce the test result, it produces repeatable data, right? You got to be able to repeat it. Especially in some of these, you got to be able to do it in a lab and in the field, right? So I touched on this, 2170, biggest one that we use in our industry. Needs to be in your toolbox. You open up your folder, you open up the console of your truck or van, that needs to be there. Because guess what? Especially if you're the one doing it, but even if they're not, someone does the test and you're going to contradict what they found. Here's why I'm contradicting. Seth said it before, let him be the bad guy. Let this thing be the bad guy. This is the document. Especially if you're doing commercial work, it's going to be in the bid packet that you test according to either 2170 or 1869. Those two that you need to have with you at all times or access to them at all times, because that can make or break you on an installation. And this is just what I was talking about before when you've got, you know, the fins on the side, they all make them the same way. That was an arduous process of getting everyone to make it the same way. But since then, we've had a lot of good results, okay? So next, we have documents that are called a practice, right? So instructions for performing specific operations that does not produce a test result. Well, what in the world does that mean if you don't get a test result for it? We've heard about this one, right? Again, in your bid packet, if you're doing commercial in Sally homeowner's house, whatever flooring that you're going to install, especially in the resilient world, they're going to reference that you do F710. You prepare the slab according to F710. If you don't have this document and train your installers on this document, how do you know they did it? Because I tell you what, when the manufacturers come out there, adhesive, underlayment, the flooring, whatever, they're going to judge you by those 3 documents that I just said. 710, 1869, 2170. Two or three, all three of them. I always liken it to, if you want to win the game, you better know the rules. And these are the rules, right? I can't stress project managers, salespeople, especially salespeople. They need to understand what they're going into, right? You have to live by this document. Those of you taking pictures, Google that. Join ASTM, get that document. It's critical for you to be successful to know that information. Okay? Sir.
Can I add a layer on that?
Sure.
ASTM F710 is, keep in mind, that is the minimum requirements that you are going to be held accountable to. Every manufacturer may have higher requirements, but if you don't at least meet those requirements, you're going to be in trouble. Every inspector, every manufacturer, everyone's going to, you turn the bus on yourself on that one, basically. So any commercial installer who does not live and die by this, although as we discussed last night, it can be better and it can always be improved. There are flaws and everything. Maybe being involved in ASTM, you get a voice on that. But I cannot stress enough how important. I don't know anybody who doesn't reference this for concrete substrate.
And you've all read it. I mean, how many documents have you read that said substrate must be clean, dry, free of, da, 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 da. That's all ASTM F710. We all, just about all of us have it in our installation documents, right? And we're quoting this. Like you said, it's the bare minimum. You've got to at least do this, right? Another practice that has come along in the last few years that was just completely misunderstood for a long time. Were you going to ask something? Oh, okay, sorry. Was the porosity test, 3191. We use that right now and we think to ourselves, how do we go this long without having a porosity test? Why is porosity important? It's really important to me, if that gives you a hint. You're using a water-based adhesive and you go over a non-porous substrate with a non-permeable flooring, that glue might, and you go into it wet, that glue might not ever dry. You've got to know. You can't just assume, oh, it's concrete, it's porous. You can't do that. You do the droplet test, and I know you're tired of seeing that slide right there, but there's a reason 3 out of the 4 of us have that on there, because it's that damn important. Excuse me, but it is, right? Huh? And simple. You don't have to have any special equipment. A straw, a water droplet, whatever you have. If it beads up on here, you need to back up and punt. One, you need to make sure that you're using the right adhesive. If you're using a mitigation system, what do you need to do to prep that slab? You probably have to open it up to make it porous, right? It's as simple as it sounds. It's something that's overlooked. And again, I can't believe we went as long as we did without having this practice in place. So again, the number that you want is 3191. Put it in your toolbox. Project managers, salespeople, they got to understand it. But look what we're doing here and some of the other stuff. We're referencing 1869, CRI, RFCI. It would be too difficult for us to come here and do these presentations and tell you everything that you need to know A to Z. Because why? It changes, right? What we need to do is tell you where to get that information. Because if you update your files and you know what you have, then you can look up the information. 1869, I mean, they're looking to change that now. And if you're not a part of that committee, you won't even know. So you got to know where to look, right? Super important and a super easy test, or excuse me, practice. And I bring that up and talk about porosity is I just wanted to touch on the CSP scale. Does everybody know what that is? Concrete surface profile. What are there, 10 now? Yeah, 10 now. But if you look, it ranges from just about smooth to no texture to number 10 looks like you're on the moon, right? You may hear mitigation companies or folks that have urethane products they want to put down for mitigation, and they're going to tell you to have CSP3. And it's not just some arbitrary number that they said, okay, that's middle of the road. No. If you look at 1 and 2, this has got more texture. So what does it do? It helps with a mechanical bond to the substrate. The biggest piece of CSP3 is, what do you think is going to happen when you do that? It's going to soak right in. Most of the time. Yeah, very rare, but if there's a contaminant, right. But 1 and 2, you can just look at those and say, it's going to be a stretch for anything to absorb into that. These, you know, they come on chain sets, unless you do a lot of big commercial work, it's not something you need to carry with you. But you do need to know about it, because a lot of manufacturers will reference this in their installation guidelines. So you got to understand what it is. I mean, look at 8, and it goes even worse, right? So if you have a question about how the slab's supposed to be prepared, or if you have a question about what the slab was supposed to look like when you got there, that's a big part of where you can use this, right? If you get to a job like this and they say it's going to be a 4 and it's an 8, that's a lot more money for you, right? It's going to a lot more underlayment, self-leveler, whatever it is. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move around so everybody can see. All right, terminology. If you talk to me more than 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about terminology with you, because there's nothing more frustrating with talking to someone and then they try to argue with you about something and they use the wrong terminology. You lose credibility, boop, right away. You've got to know what you're talking about. You're calling a manufacturer to have questions about the way you installed a product, an adhesive company, a flooring company, whatever. If you start spitting out the wrong terms, they're going to be like, I don't know if this guy did the best job. That's human nature. It's not a preconceived notion, but you're going to think it's human nature. But if you understand this terminology and have that document there, you look more professional, right? What happens when you look more professional? You act more professional, right? So terminology 141, constantly being revised. We've been working on it for 2 years. I think we got 4 words done. It's very intense to what it covers, all right? Going fast enough. All right, 141. Again, it references the specification. Why does it reference that specification? Because that specification has terminology in it. If you don't know the terminology, you can't understand the specification, right? They all work together. You can see it starts out, just a couple of the words, cellular concrete, coefficient of friction. It covers a lot of things that are in our industry. I'll put it that way, because it's more than nouns, verbs, it's a lot. Another one you need to have in your toolbox, that $115 membership is more than paid for itself, because I'm at 5 now. They're $40 a piece. And there's more. Actually, I'm at 6, right? $26.59, $31.91. Yeah. So one thing that we talked about earlier too that I'm going to touch on that's completely underutilized in the industry are MAP bond tests. We talked about the chalky slab. We talked about, things that are stressful installations or, not as planned installations. That's more important than anything. But it could be a perfectly prepped slab. You still want to do that bond test because there may be a curing compound on there. Why can't you have curing compounds on there? I'll go into that in a minute. But guess what? ASTM 710 says they got to be gone. Your builder, your GC, your whoever says, yeah, I put the spray and pray on there and, it's fine. It's going to dissipate. We'll walk it off. That doesn't matter. Was it compatible? Well, they're both acrylic, but that's not what I'm worried about. So when you put that cure and seal, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use a name, a curing compound on there, and it's supposed to be dissipative, what does that mean? It means it's just kind of flake off when people walk on it, maybe the UV light. So right here in these walkways, you think it's all gone? Yes, probably all gone. What about that corner right there or that corner over there? You can't look at it and know that it's there or not. So you've got to prepare the entire slab to make sure it's gone, right? And like I said, it could be acrylic and your adhesive is acrylic, but it's not the chemistry that we're worried about, right? They're chemically compatible. We're worried about the mechanical bond, right? It'd be like trying to stick a Band-Aid to your skin while you got a sunburn and you're peeling. It's not going to work, right? If it's clean, dry, free of contaminants, a Band-Aid will go right on my hand and you won't have any issues, right? Clean, dry, free of contaminants. It's really, really important. But again, 710 is going to cover curing compounds. Let me see what I got. I think I got it pulled up. Well, it kicked me off. Bless them. No, I got it. I'm on there. One that I didn't know if I was going to have time to talk about or not, so I'm going to throw it in there because we do have a few minutes before we eat. Is this standard guide for measurement of pH? I know everyone's, just about everybody's talked about it. And to Dean's point, I chaired this subcommittee for 3 years, maybe 3 years, 2.5 years. I think we got 4 sentences written. Nobody could agree on anything. So we turned it over to the lieutenant colonel over there, and he got it done. So he was the chair. Look, I mentioned it before, are you going to do a pH test, and if it comes back in spec and you go, oh, we're good? No, that's not how that works. It's the totality of the circumstances, right? Forensically, we use pH a lot. On the front end, doing a pH test, oh, it's 5. Guess what? We probably have a curing compound. pH is 14 without doing any scraping. Well, there's not a layer of carbonization on there. Why? Starts the wheels turning. You call the Ardexes, the Mapays, the Ladicretes, Lobovocals. We have all these people in our group that created our subfloor substrate program just to answer those questions, right? It's super important to make sure you understand what it is. Is it something that you guys may have heard me say it? I've never stopped an installation because somebody said their pH was too high, right? Haven't done it. Does it make the flag go up and go, well, let's find out why? Sure. Most of the time it's because they sanded too hard. Right? I got a 12 plus. There's very specific instructions in here on how to prepare the substrate for the pH test. And when I tell you that was a point of contention through that committee, that would be an understatement. Define clean with an ASTM committee. It's that great. But does anybody have any questions about ASTM, which ones you need, which ones you use? Understand the difference between specifications. You can't get to a specification unless you understand the test methods. The test methods get you there. Specifications will put you in a classification, category. Again, we don't use that in FO6, but they do in other committees. Again, taking notes, is ASTM FO6 is the resilient committee, resilient flooring committee. Terminology, really important for you to understand what you're talking about, because again, you instantly lose credibility. So, all right, we got about 10 minutes before we're going to go to lunch. Where's Chucklehead? He's not in here. You know, a lot of you see me and think I'm the face of NAFCT. Things couldn't be the opposite. I am such a small part of what this great organization is. I'm looking at all my partners in this building. There's a lot of us here. But I can't go without telling or giving credit to Paul. Paul Pleshak, he's the guy behind the scenes. He gets all this done. He set all this up. Paul and Sarah, without them, we wouldn't have NAFCT. So I just want to make sure that I said that and made it clear that those two run it. But we also have our educational partners and our you snuck in, let's see. We have our educational partners and our founding members that support the group. Again, if you want a taste of what we're doing, go to the website, watch a video, see what we're doing, what we're all about. But it's essentially just like what we were doing today. We go knee deep into these problems that you guys are seeing in the field. I mean, think about it. If a painter came in to paint this wall and the drywall was bumpy, does he have to prep that so he can paint it? No. How did we get to the point of where we are right now? Some may say complacency, but it's not understanding what needs to happen. If you understand what needs to happen, you can work with your builder, your GC, your customer months in advance to make sure it's ready when you get there. You don't have to show up the day of the job and realize there's a problem and then try to figure out how to fix it, right? So, all right, if nobody's got any questions, let's go get some lunch.